Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Student Zone session here at Build 2020. Before we get started, I do want to remind you of our code of conduct. Our code of conduct basically just says, let's all be friends and friendly here in the chats. We are all excited to be a part of this great community. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Megan Lewis, who's going to be giving us a brief introduction into Rust. Megan, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I see that we have folks from really all around the world, so this is very exciting. I hope that everyone is having a great time at Build so far and enjoying the Student Zone sessions. So I'm going to be going over a brief introduction to Rust. We only have 30 minutes, so there's only so much that we can do, but this session will provide a brief overview of the language, syntax, and usage. My goal is that you leave the session knowing how to get started programming in Rust and finding the resources to help you explore and learn more. Just a little bit about me. My name is Megan Lewis, and I'm a senior program manager here at Microsoft. I spend a lot of time developing content around different technologies and speaking at different events like Build, other workshops and tech talks, and I've recently started live streaming as well. So I'm just really excited to be here. I am at my heart a technologist who has just really enjoyed learning and exploring with emerging technologies. I live and work in the Bay Area, where I've been here for the past 10 years. That's the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm sorry, I should specify there. But yeah, welcome everyone, and let's go ahead and jump right in. Here is the agenda of what I'm going to be covering for the next 30 minutes, starting with what is Rust, why use it, how to get started, and then I'll spend a chunk of time going over a live demo where I build an app, and then another chunk of time at the end answering questions. I will not be showing how to install Rust, but definitely we will share the resources that you need to do so. Yeah, so without further ado, let me jump right in. Rust is a programming language that empowers everyone to build reliable and efficient software. This is a quote from the Rust website and the principles that the core developer team keep in mind as they continue to evolve and grow the Rust language. Rust is fun to write, easy to read, and highly performant. It can offer a number of benefits like predictable cleanup of resources, lower overhead for memory management, and essentially no runtime, so it can handle really system critical services. It is also a great alternative to languages like C, C++, and even Go, with similar performance and yet better memory safety. Rust is a statically and strongly typed systems programming language, which means that all types are known at compile time, and these types are designed to make it harder to write incorrect or bad programs. For the 4th year in a row, Rust has been rated the most loved programming language according to the annual Stack Overflow Developer Survey. So this means that there is a lot of buzz around Rust and people want to use it for either personal or professional projects. And that's really why I wanted to learn Rust, because of kind of all the buzz around it and wanting to explore what the language has to offer. Rust has a growing community of users and contributors, an active core developer team, and friendly documentation and tooling to help you build, compile, test, and more. Rust is ideal for system programmers writing WebAssembly and lower level programs. It's good for doing things like building operating systems, writing device drivers, and other embedded systems. It is also proving to be a very productive tool for command line applications, for networking, gaming, and honestly, really any other kind of web application that you want to create. In addition, Rust is starting to be used more and more by different companies, ranging from startups to large enterprise companies. For example, Microsoft is using Rust to rewrite some of the low-level components of the Windows operating system that were originally written in C and C++. So that is a little bit about the background of Rust. To get started, honestly, the best thing that you can do is visit the Rust website at www.rust-lane.org. And there you're going to find a lot of different information, starting with how you can install and get started with Rust. There's also a ton of great resources. There is a quest book. There is a Rust Links course on GitHub, which has really short exercises to get some hands-on experience with writing Rust code. And there's also a Rust by example, where you can kind of go through a bunch of different hands-on exercises and kind of get more of that experience with writing different Rust syntax. Additionally, there is a playground where you can write and run Rust without having to install tools, and you just kind of get to play around, run, build, test. And you can just go there again to learn a lot more about the community, see how Rust is built, and start coding with Rust. So next, I'm going to transition over to a demo for the next 10 minutes or so. And to do that, I'm going to start at my terminal. So there is something that I want to call out, and that is Cargo. So I have Cargo installed in addition to Rust, and Cargo is Rust build system and package manager. So when I run the Cargo command, you can see all of the different options that are available here, such as build, check, test, and more. So to begin to actually create a new program, let me go ahead and clear that out. I can use the syntax cargo, new, and then specify the name of the project that I want to create. And the project that I'm going to be creating, or program rather, is a simple guessing game app that is going to allow users to input a value between 1 and 10. And then we're going to write some code to compare that with the actual random number that the program generates. So let's call this cargo new, new guessing game. And then I'm going to hit enter. And so I see some output here that we have created a binary app new guessing game package. So let me now change directories to the new guessing game. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up in VS Code using command. Let me make this bigger so everyone can see it. So using Cargo, I am set up with a few different things here. So the first is the cargo.toml file. So this is a configuration file where I can define project details and also add some dependencies and different libraries that I can use to incorporate into my program. And I'll be coming back to this in just a minute as we go ahead and add a dependency later. And there's also a source directory, and in here I have the main.rs class, and this is the RS is the extension for a Rust program. And you can see by default it just goes ahead and creates this main function for me, which is required in every program to have at least this main function. And we're just printing out a simple hello world line to be printed out to the terminal. So I'm going to start building right into this class that I have. And what I'm going to do initially is consider how I'm going to take the user input. So what I want to do is to specify the standard library for input and output. So I can say use standard : IO and add a semicolon at the end of that. One thing that I meant to call out here is that I'm also using the Rust extension, and that's something that's going to be really helpful as you're writing Rust programs, just to give you a little bit of information about the program, some code completion. You can see some syntax highlighting here and other helpful things that will help me write my program. So if you are using VS Code, I highly, highly recommend installing the Rust extension. So after I have imported this standard library, what I want to start doing is basically just to allow user input. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and replace what this println is doing initially, and I want to say guess a number between 1 and 10. And I'll just add a colon and a space there. And so this is going to just print out a line to ask me to input a number. I am now going to define a new variable. So the way to define a new variable in Rust is to use that let keyword. And then I want to define a mutable variable. So something that's interesting in Rust is that by default, variables are immutable, which means that the value cannot be changed. But since I want to input a guess, and I might want to input multiple guesses, I want to allow this number to actually be changed, or this variable to be changed. And I'm going to go ahead and say string : new. And what that's going to do is create a new mutable variable that is bound to a new empty instance of a string. And I'm probably getting some error here. Variable does not need to be mutable, or warning, it's not an error. But I just like to keep an eye on those as I'm writing my program to get a better understanding of what might be wrong here. So next, what I want to do is to actually read in that input. So what I'm going to do here is to call the standard input function from the IO module. And from that, I want to create a line. And you can see the parameters that this method is expecting here. It's expecting a mutable string, and that's very convenient because we have, in fact, created a mutable string up here. So I'm just going to replace what's here with an mute guess. And basically what this is doing is just creating a reference to my variable here. So it's allowing me to access this variable without copying it into memory. And then on the next line, I'm going to say .expect. And here I just am defining some kind of message that I can send out, and my program can actually emit if something goes wrong while I'm reading this line. So here I can say failed to read the line for whatever reason that might be. And this is basically, it's really nice feature of Rust as well, and where we kind of build in different ways to catch errors. And here we're just catching a possible error that might happen from a user input. The next thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and print out the guess. So I'm going to say print ln, and in the quotes, I'm going to say you guessed. And then I add these curly braces, which are basically just a placeholder for the variable. And as the second parameter, I need to go ahead and pass in that guess. So this is just what I have to get started with. And I'm going to take a moment now to go ahead and open up the terminal. And once I'm here, I should be in the correct directory for this program. I want to go ahead and just run cargo run. And what this does is compile and run my program. So if you see down at the very bottom of my screen, I have a prompt telling me to guess a number between 1 and 10. So I can guess a number, let's say 5, and then the terminal will say you guess 5 as an output. So there is kind of the start to my program. The next thing that I want to do is to actually have my program define a random number that I'm guessing. So first I'm going to go over to the cargo.toml file. And then what I want to do in here is to bring in this rand library and specify the current version of the rand library here in quotes, and go ahead and save that file. Oops, sorry, there we go. That looks better. One moment. Okay, sorry. My display went out for a second, so I'm just making sure that everything is still good here. All right, it looks good to go. So now that I'm back in business, I want to go back over to main.rs. And what I want to do now is I'm going to start at the top of my file, and after line 1, what I want to do is specify to use rand RNG. So basically, this is just going to allow me to use that library to generate random numbers. And then immediately after my main function definition, I want to define a new variable called number and say that number is equal to rand : thread RNG dot gen underscore range. And within this range, I want to specify to generate a random number between 1 and 11, with 1 being inclusive of that lower bound there, and 11 is exclusive. So this is going to generate some random number between 1 and 10. And then just after that line, I'm going to add another print just for now, so that I can go ahead and see what that number is. And use that same syntax to go ahead and create a placeholder here, and then pass in the number as well. So now my program is actually going to go ahead and generate a random number for me. Next, I'm going to introduce standard CMP ordering. And what this is going to do is use the standard library comparison function through an enum called ordering. And what this is going to do is compare two values and return a result on whether or not the number is greater than, less than, or equal to. So I'm going to go down now to the bottom of my program after the guess, and here I'm going to say match. And you can see it kind of gave me the outline for this match code here, but this match is a control flow operator, and it's a nice alternative to an if else statement. So what I can say for my expression, I want to use my guess to compare the number. And then within the body of this, I'm just going to replace all of this for now. I want to bring in that ordering and say : less, and then determine what to do. If this expression evaluates to less, I would print out too low. Next, I'm going to use ordering to determine what to do if the guess is greater than the number. And here I can say print ln too high. And finally, I can say ordering equal. And if it's equal, I'm going to want to do a couple things. First, I'm going to print out you win, because that is going to mean that I won the game and we can stop the program. And that is it for now. I do want to go ahead and address, I see that there is an error up here. It's a little bit hard to see. Let me scroll down there. So what's happening here is that we expected number to be a string and found that it was an integer instead. So we have this guess variable that is a string that we're inputting directly from the command line, but up here we define this number that is just a regular integer basically. So what I need to do now is to change my guess to actually be of a type variable. So here I can say let guess : U32. So U32 is an unsigned 32-bit integer, which I'm going to assume this number is also an unsigned 32-bit integer, and it kind of just updated the type there. Before, when I had hovered over this, it said error, but it's kind of a safe assumption. We're only doing, only allowing numbers between 1 and 10, so this should definitely be sufficient. In Rust, there are various integer types ranging from 8-bit to I think 100, what is it, 164-bit, and there's both unsigned and signed integers. So there's some various options there, but for our purposes, it should be totally fine to just go ahead and use that unsigned integer 32-bit. And next, what I want to do is to take the input from that guess string and trim off any possible white space. And then I want to account for any non-number to possibly be returned. So here I can say .expect, and I want to just pass in some kind of message in case we have something that is not a number. Perhaps someone is trying to break my program and enter it in some kind of emoji or something that we cannot then evaluate. So go ahead and just define our new variable as guess. And I should take a moment to explain that this is kind of a new variable, but this highlights a principle in Rust called shadowing. So we can shadow the previous value of a variable with a new one. So I can have two variables with the same name, but basically all I'm doing here is kind of citing this or temporarily giving it a new type so that we can have new values for this variable guess. And this is really nice because I don't have to worry about like creating multiple variables. Maybe this would be guess string and this would be guess int. I could just use this shadowing to go ahead and allow for new values. So that fixed my error here. And my program is looking pretty good. The only other thing that I want to do for now actually is to allow me to continue to guess a number until I actually win the game. So to do that, I just want to incorporate a loop into my program. So after generating the number, I'm going to go ahead and say loop. And this is a very basic type of loop that's available in Rust. Some of you might be familiar with for and while loops, and those actually wait for some kind of condition to be met before breaking out of that loop. Our loop here is just going to, at the moment, loop indefinitely. So this is just a very quick and easy loop that I could use. And I'm going to go ahead and just indent everything that I want to be included in my loop and add that closing curly brace there. And after I have actually guessed the right number, after printing U1, I want to go ahead and add a break statement. And this is just going to exit out of the execution for my program. So this is pretty much where I'm going to stop today. I want to allow enough time for Q&A, but this is just kind of showing you how I can create a program to guess a number and have a little bit of interaction with the command line. And it also just highlights some of the different principles of Rust and just gives you an idea of what our Rust program can look like. So before I exit out of here, I do want to go ahead and run my program one more time. And a couple things are happening here. I haven't run my program since I basically have started adding code, but you'll notice that there is all this compiling happening since I introduced the rand library. So we're compiling that as well as all the other dependencies that came along with that random library. And here I am going to guess a number. So if I guess 3, I can see that my guess is too low. If I guess 5, it's too high. And if I guess 3, oh, the number is 3, right? Okay, something about that is not right. So there's actually an error here that I need to go and fix. And so I'm looking at this and trying to find out what my error is now, but that's not exactly what I had expected. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time looking into this, unfortunately, because I do want to allow time for questions, and we are running a little bit low on time, but this is something that would be good to look into. I do also want to call out right now that if you want to look more into this example and you want to continue to explore and kind of write your own Rust programs, again, check out www.rust-lang.org. And there you can find a ton of learning resources, including more information about how to extend this simple guessing game to get started. So I think that's it for right now that I wanted to share. I am going to find out what's going on with this program shortly, but let's go ahead and transition over to Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. We really appreciate it. And if you were wondering if this is actually live, yes, it is. And we try to do live coding here. And so, Megan, do you want to share your camera again? So we can see our faces. Awesome. So we have a couple of questions. One of them is, why might someone use Rust over another language?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I mean, in the beginning, I had just called out a couple different languages, in particular C++. That is where you really see a lot of folks transitioning from, rewriting their C and C++ programs into Rust. Just because of some of the features that Rust provides in terms of really being more memory safe and kind of allowing you to write kind of just more secure programs and understand whether your programs are correct at compile time. So you can get a lot more information up front. But I think those are kind of the couple languages that I can call in particular. There's also some folks that are kind of seeing it as an alternate to Go. But like I mentioned in the beginning as well, you can really use Rust to write kind of any program. I think it's being used, especially at the enterprise level, for a lot more kind of lower level language things. But I would definitely encourage you just to, if you're curious about exploring more, and I'm assuming you are because you're here, feel free to kind of just explore building your own programs. Like I just wrote this guessing game, right? It's not something that is very intensive on memory or anything like that, but it's just going to allow me to really get familiar with Rust syntax and usage.
Awesome. And someone mentioned the Rust book, and a few people are asking questions about, Rust maybe seems a little bit intimidating. How long would it take for someone to feel comfortable in it? And, how can they? Do you have any advice for them there?
Yeah, that's definitely a great question. I would say, and if you are familiar with other programming languages, you maybe can see that it is a little unique and some of the different the syntax and different types and basically how you write Rust. So I think some of that is a little bit more unique, but definitely go through the book. I think that the book really goes into detail about how to use and get comfortable with Rust, as well as the other resources that I called out, like Rust by Example. And even going through that Rust Links course, the best thing that you can do is get as much hands-on experience as you can to get a little bit more comfortable with all the rules and the specifics of Rust.
Yep. Someone was asking if you could show what's in cargo.toml. Is that how you pronounce it? One more time, and maybe kind of go over it. So I'll share your screen again.
Okay, so let's go back over to the cargo.toml. So I did kind of breeze through this, but in this config file, you'll notice just up top that there is information about the program in particular. So I can see the name, the version, authors, the edition of Rust. I think the key here is the dependencies. So I just added a simple dependency, just this rand library, but any more sophisticated program would likely end up using a lot of different dependencies. So Rust is just, or Cargo rather, is going to help you manage all of your packages and your libraries in one central location very easily.
Awesome. Let's see. Oh, it looks like someone also just mentioned that we're going to have Ryan Levick talk about the Rust language at Microsoft in the Microsoft Open Source Virtual Summit. So check out the Q&A for that if you are interested in Rust, because that'll be another great time to learn more. Some folks are asking about web frameworks. I found this one called Rocket. Do you have any other web frameworks for Rust that you would recommend?
Now, I would also recommend Rocket myself. I think that's kind of the top web framework that I'm seeing with Rust right now. So definitely check it out. I haven't really explored it too much. I haven't really written many web apps for Rust, but I've heard great things about Rocket so far.
Awesome. Have you heard of any Rust integrations with Microsoft Office, especially Excel? They're asking.
Huh. You know, that's a good question, and really none are coming to mind, no. But I'd be curious to look that one up. And some of the use cases around there. Yeah, I'm curious to know, what would you be interested in doing with a Rust integration with Office or Excel?
Yeah, I'm also curious. What about Rust for like machine learning or AI?
Yeah, I can't think of any particular use cases there, honestly, but I mean, I'm sure that there are people out there using Rust for, like, again, any kind of app development that you might imagine. So there's probably somewhere someone out there using Rust for ML and AI.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as more of a Rust novice here, it seems like Rust is definitely meant more for those low-level programming languages, or to replace or, use instead of those low-level programming languages, rather than these like Azure, these AI and machine learning type things where maybe you might be using something like Python. But I'm really curious to learn about all of the different applications. I was looking up things prior to this session around using it for video games and things like that. So I'm excited to see kind of how you might replace it. The first video game I built was in C++. So now I'm excited to kind of go back and see, might Rust be a better language for that?
Same. Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah. And that's something that I am very much looking forward to exploring as well. Gaming has seemed to be a very common use case for Rust. I've seen some game engines built in Rust and kind of some cool games just built in Rust as well. So definitely excited to check that out. I think I'm like you. I kind of learned how to build games in C++. So I'm curious about the differences there.
Awesome. Well, we're just at about time, and I did want to make sure that we show you a couple other things. So Megan, if you wouldn't mind sharing that last slide, and over in the chat, we'll also paste a link to this. But we really appreciate your time spending your time here in the student zone, and we would really appreciate it if you gave us your feedback. This is an anonymous survey. We'll post the link down in the chat, aka.ms/studentzone2020 survey. use the session code COM209. That's COM209, also pasted in the chat. This allows us to make sure that we're actually developing and delivering the content that you want to hear and see. So if you enjoyed this or want to see something different, please fill out that survey so that we can make sure that we continue to bring you what you want to see. And for further learning, both on the session that you heard just now, as well as all sessions that we've run as part of the Student Zone, you can head over to aka.ms/students@build to continue your learning. So I want to thank you again, Megan, for this great session, and thank all of the participants for your great questions and some of the answers that y'all put in there. Thanks for joining.
Thank you all. Bye.